What if Billy survived the original Scream and became a recurring villain throughout the series? Now, I just want to clarify, when I say survived, I'm not talking about he kills Sydney and then every year different people come to Woodsboro and he starts to cycle again. I'm not referring to turning Scream into a villain based series. More so the idea of kind of flipping something Wes Craven said on its head, where he was talking about how with Nightmare on Elm Street, every movie you have the killer who comes back and then these bunch of random people, some are more likable than others, depending on what movie you're watching, and that it becomes very redundant to keep having this same killer have to go against a new group of teenagers. And the idea with Scream is that, you have these protagonists who can grow and change, and that there's a different villain each movie. But I would argue that having a different person be Ghostface every single film in its own way can become formulaic, because you always know it's some new character who you see a few times before their reveal, and it isn't something that really stands out or sticks out after the first few couple of times. So I think having at least one ghost face that you see more than once is something that could spice things up a little bit. The way we would do this is alter the ending of the first Scream to where, instead of him getting shot, he gets, stabbed by Sydney. She walks away. Maybe she's arguing with Gail about, should we kill him, kill him, kill him? Just make sure that he's like gone forever, gone for good, or should he face actual jail time for these different crimes he's committed? And while they're talking to each other, he just vanishes, kind of like Michael in the first Halloween, and that would be a hell of a homage with the last name Loomis. Then when you get to Scream 2, the movie largely plays out the same, except with the variation that you would see about maybe 2 or 3 scenes of Billy calling Sydney on these different payphones, and he's like, "Hey Sid, how's school? Too bad Tatum couldn't join you," just kind of mocking her. And she would be like, "Go to hell," whatever generic response you can imagine, just in an angered state. But his role would be to torment the protagonist, and also to play a larger role in that his mother would be the killer, as she is in the film proper, along with Mickey. And her motive would be that, okay, yeah, my son is still alive, but I have not talked to him. I have not seen him ever since he was outed as a killer. He's been on the run. He won't return my calls. I can't reach out to him. He can't reach out to me. You've destroyed our lives. I should also say, I don't have parents who are like this. My dad and I haven't spoken in 2 years, which is why we call him the father who didn't bother. And I'm not going to get started on the mother that made her son homeless because she charged him to live with her while he was unemployed. But there are parents who, if they don't see their kid for even a few days, it will drive them crazy. So the idea of Mrs. Loomis going nuts, that Sydney has effectively, by revealing what Billy is, destroyed her relationship with him, I think is very realistic and could serve as a good motive. Now, my alteration here would be that, you would keep her alive, have her get shot, in like the shoulder or the arm, some way that incapacitates her, but not in a manner where she's just, confirmed deceased. Now, when you get to Scream 3, and this is really the one where we want to make the biggest alteration. Instead of having, just Roman as the killer, you're going to have Billy, who, we've kind of, I don't want to say we built him up in Scream 2, but we kind of had him as like a lingering presence, kind of like a secondary antagonist who's more so there to just kind of play like a psychological role. He's in this film, and in his first couple of scenes, and these are short scenes that are probably like a minute at maximum. They're stretched out over, I'd say, the first probably 2 acts of the movie, where you're just seeing him for a minute or 2 at a time, talking to the payphone. Hey, you turned me into this. You gave me the clue of how to start this with Stu, and it's only natural that we get back together and finish what we started. And you're wondering, like, who the hell is he talking to? But you know that whoever he's speaking with is someone that is Ghostface. And what the reveal would be is that when we find out that it's Roman who's one of the killers, which would be before the final act, or like right as the final act is leading into itself, that's where you'd see Roman with the phone just kind of like slam it down, and that's the reveal of, okay, this is the other killer. In this final confrontation, I'd be a lot more interested in just having Sidney have to overcome both of them, not at the same time, because you'd want Gale and Dewey to also be involved there. But there would be like comments by Civ, like today this ends. I've been tormented by you now for years. It's over. And the decision to kill Billy off here is that in this version, because I'm going to do a separate video about Billy's legacy in Scream and how he's really the perfect archenemy for Sidney, even in only being in the first movie, and after that just having this presence of either being mentioned or driving the plot posthumously. But killing him in the third film, after having him in the second, again in a smaller role than he had in the first, but killing him at the end of this trilogy, which is what Scream was intended to be, is really, I think, the most proper way to bookend that original set of films, where the killer who started it, he survived, he lingered, and he, in his hubris and belief that this would go on forever, like these damn horror movie series that he is such a fan of, has now caused him to overestimate his own durability, his own longevity, and allows for Sidney to take him out. Now, of course, we could write him to escape again, but I know Scream can have some like contrivances. People have pointed this out, but I really think if we're going off of that original vision of just 3 movies, of course 4 came out 11 years later, I don't think there's a scenario where were he brought back, he would survive past the original trilogy, because the idea there is that by killing him, by killing this singular individual who's most associated with Ghostface, you are effectively ending that main motivator for them to keep reappearing, even though we know that we're going to eventually get 4 and then it's going to all start over again. But just to go back to talking about 3, so his role in this movie, again, is in that for those first 2 acts, mostly just him on the phone. Maybe he's calling Sidney to antagonize her. Maybe he's talking to this other ghost face that we don't see. And then in the 3rd act, that's where we get the reveal that, he was motivated by Roman. And now you have the original ghost face with the ghost face behind the ghost face. And I think that would be a hell of a conclusion for this trilogy. So as I said earlier, I would keep Mrs. Loomis alive, and in Scream 4, I would have it to where there would be 3 killers. You'd have Charlie, Jill, and Mrs. Loomis. And Mrs. Loomis' thing is that she's upset that her son has been, laying in the ground for 10 years while the woman that she believes ruined his life gets to, publish this book and parade herself around as victim. This like really distorted view of Sidney. And she would kind of take on Jill in the sort of mentorship role. And I would, I know that we in the film property of Jill betrayed Charlie. The impetus behind her not betraying Mrs. Loomis is that they're kind of, I'd imply that they've been plotting this for a while. She's like the mother she actually wants, right? The one who's going to help her to stardom. So it's really just a matter of their personalities like clicking in a way where she doesn't think there's a benefit to getting rid of the person who's helped her to elevate to such a degree. But yeah, this would be my idea for a alternate set of Scream scripts after the first film, or I guess also altering the first film where Billy survives. If you ask me, if I really had to say, does this make Scream better? I don't know. Because I think Billy is one of the few antagonists in that series that's actually been honored pretty well. And even if he's deceased, he still has a very strong presence. I guess I could compare him to Norman Osborn from the original Spider-Man trilogy, where, yeah, they die in the first movie, but their impact is so strong, certainly through these, the successive films, even if they're not there, that you still have the ramifications of what they did lingering and being this thing that just kind of drives, like how with the Goblin, Harry eventually is driven down that same route of villainy. So too are these other Ghostface. They're all trying to recreate what was started, in part by Billy. So this is just my idea, my set of plots and theories. I'm not going to proclaim this makes anything better. I really just wanted to give an idea of that it's possible to have reoccurring villains and make them actually change and kind of like alter or have some interesting role to play in the story as it progresses.